Hello. This is my book, my magazine publication I have created. If you want to flip through that. So, a magazine. What is a magazine, Will?
What is a magazine?
How would you define a magazine?
A collection of pages around a unifying theme.
So, how would I make mine different? It's like, what are the boundaries? How far can you go within a magazine to make it still a magazine?
Is that a question for me? Sorry.
Well, it's kind of like a rhetorical question. You can think about it.
I will do, thank you.
My first thought when I was thinking about magazines was from a weekly magazine from a newsstand. Like you go into WH Smith's and magazines in there. But then I thought about it. I thought you could expand and make them more different. So homelessness, how could I address this issue? Originally, I wanted to show places where homeless people sleep, but not including the people in the photos. It is going to be a photo book with type across it. My idea kind of changed to be like to see the differences in the way of life between the contrast in difference between like a middle class citizen family to homeless people. And in this slide you can see that I've put quotes. I wanted to put quotes kind of for the middle class that maybe you might say without thinking, to like things you might take for granted. And these coincide with the facts kind of about the way that homeless people live and how life's like for them. The example up here is like, on the left here it says bloody adverts, and it's about the TV. You're sitting there watching TV, like your favourite show, and then adverts come on, kind of ruins it for you. But compared to a homeless person, where like the equivalent to this to a homeless person will be sitting at the side of the high street watching everyone kind of walk past, ignoring them. Even people could even walk around them, like even move out of their way, but just still not even acknowledging them. The USP of my book is to flip it. You can flip it over so you can read it from one side, flip the book over and read it from the other side, depending on if you wanted to view it as life in the homeless point of view or as the point of view of the middle class. I did a pitch about my ideas, and my ideas changed from after the pitch, where before the pitch I was only going to include places of where homeless people sleep, and on the side next to it I would include text kind of describing the area. I thought what I would do, there's no comparison to how middle class people live, so I would compare by putting the photos adjacent to each other so you could compare it in front of your eyes. There are some commercial factors like funding, printing costs and material sourcing. I funded it myself and it was quite cheap to print. All the materials were sourced locally from shops around Chichester and College. I also thought of where I can sell it. It would be in kind of little bookshops and stands, but mainly online where people can search for it and have a look. Why would it appeal to my audience? So, who has the latest phone? People love to compare. Let's have a look at your phones. Who's got the latest? Who's got the newest phone? Who wants the newest phone?
Me.
Everyone wants the newest phone. So, let's switch this around. Let's compare you to someone that has less than you. Like a homeless person, what do they have? someone that can't afford to eat, someone that doesn't even have the safety and security you have. Now, how do you feel about that, Kevin? You feel like you've taken things for granted? So there are some copyright aspects. Some fonts I've used are from online sites. I had to research if they were used, if I could use them for commercial or if they were just private use. Some of my choices were restricted as it was just for personal use, but I looked at it and I found some nice fonts that I could be used for commercial. The photos taken are all mine, and I have tried to not include anything that people can take offensively. And my book is made from recycled paper and homemade Khadi paper, or handmade Khadi paper. All the materials are bought locally, so not any kind of travel costs like pollution from lorries and stuff, other than it going to the shops itself. Throughout my research, I have looked at things like house style, how to get a style through the whole of the magazine, everything, negative space, using space to make things stand out, which leads on to page hierarchy. It's like what is more important on the page, and how to justify your text. So does it go to the left, to the right? Is it fully justified so the sides are the same, or is it just center aligned? I also looked at the proximity, which is how close things are to each other. My material for the front cover, I decided to use Khadi paper, as it's handmade in India. India has the highest population of homeless people, with 78 million. So I feel by using something made in India, it is probably hiring unemployed people so they can get a bit of money. So it's even helping homeless people by getting employment. And Khadi paper is actually made from the cuttings from t-shirt production. So like in the old factories, it would go to paper factories to be like reused, not just thrown away. The texture is rough and not so clean, so it kind of gives the homeless feel to it, so it relates to the project. I also used tracing paper for the middle, as it distorts the image underneath, almost like it's hidden behind a layer of ignorance, like homelessness. It's like you don't see where homeless people think, you don't even think about where homeless people sleep. You just kind of think about your own bed at the end of the day, and you don't even think like, where are you going to sleep tonight? You don't even have to think about that. So pulling back the paper is like revealing the issue and allowing the reader to be more active and more aware of the issue. So the layout on the homeless images, I have kind of tried to use the same type. I used a 1942 report font. It's like an old typewriter font too. It just feels old, like an old typewriter, and typewriters are kind of outdated and forgotten about since the popularity of computing. And so homeless people are also forgotten about and ignored. What I could have done for this was I could have used a real typewriter to actually give it more feel and authenticity. I looked at the juxtaposition of my pages and having the two contrasting pages of the middle class life and the homeless life. What I could have improved is the alignment of my pages. Some of the text was out of line and didn't really go all the way through, so I could improve this by having a better grid and balancing the pages better. Also, it would have been better if there was more consistency in the fonts throughout my project. so I used the 1942 report, and you're probably asking yourself, why are there so many other different fonts in there? Some of them are relating to what the image is saying and what the type is saying. Like this example up here is, I tried to make it like a menu, so I kind of use a more fancy font, but it doesn't consist all the way through, and with some of the fonts, like there are unrelated typefaces which I should have stayed, like kept as one single font for all the unrelated ones. There wasn't really a consistency of capital letters at the start of sentences, which also could be improved. The alignment, I could also have the indent and border sizes all the same, but due to cropping and afterwards, some of them were not. I should have stuck to one justification, as some were centre aligned, some were aligned to the left, and it did not look like it had much of a house style. So I should have had consistency in the style, size and font. I looked at a few photographers for my images. I looked at Dave Hill, which gives an appealing sense of desire. He wants to like portray the American dream in his photos and does a lot of advertising. So I tried to incorporate this into mine by advertising the middle class way of life and making it more desirable to homeless people. I looked at Brian Matthias. She did like a HDR photography, which makes the photos look more gritty and gives it kind of more depth and character. I looked at Paul C. Wright, who has a book called Invisible Cities, which is more abandoned kind of places, how places are run down. And I looked at a book, it was a supplement from the Creative Review magazine. It was about the Olympic cities after how it, after the Olympics, how they get abandoned and they're just left to kind of rot. Really. I looked at Scott Hafner, who looked at urban exploration into going to abandoned derelict places, seeing the decay of them relating to my project. For the binding, I thought I'd stitched it. It keeps the book quite strong and when done correctly looks neat. Unfortunately mine doesn't look too neat, but if I did it more carefully. It also makes the book feel more personal, and as the time and effort put into it makes it feel more belonging to you. There's a bibliography of all the sources I used. So, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
So you're going to do it as a stand, you know, possibly put it in a stand in bookshops.
Yeah.
What was the recommended price for it?
Sorry?
The recommended price.
The price is on the front, just under
Oh,
the
so
title. It's $5.99. I put it.
Oh,
as.
right, yeah.
As,
So I can see it now.
The paper is colour paper. It's not too expensive, but you would want some profits to go to homeless.
Exactly. And how about contact numbers or any kind of further information on that? Is there a supplement to it or anything for further information, or is it?
There's not. I originally intended to put some contacts in the back and the front where it kind of says a publication by Dave Baker Irons, but unfortunately I ran out of time.
No, that's it. But it's
I
an
could
area of
improve my
consideration.
time management for next time.
But it's something you're considering.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you left out of your evaluation that can you think of?
Editorial processes, maybe?
I mean, that was a critical point. Is there anything else that you feel that you've missed out on in your magazine?
Oh, I can't think right now. Not on the spot.
Okay. I would really like to also have a little, I think Will is kind of picking up on the same kind of thing I'm interested in, is like, where is this market? Because that seemed to be kind of skimmed over quite quickly in your discussion.
Yes.
And we did have a pitch on that, we did discuss that.
Yeah.
It was a really important aspect of it. You know, generating an audience for your product is really important.
Yeah. Mainly like middle class people that kind of read like Hello magazine, they would kind of compare themselves to the models in there, whereas this book is kind of comparing, but the other way around, comparing to people that has kind of less than you.
Okay, so did you borrow anything from that audience's, or you know, similar and existing products?
No.
So they would already be aware of a kind of visual language. They would already understand and appreciate that visual language that exists.
Yeah.
And it's really common for graphic designers to reference those, but maybe twist them, maybe break the boundaries, like you said. So you came out with quite interesting ideas about breaking boundaries, and we're wondering what boundaries then you broke of
Yeah.
a magazine.
It doesn't seem to relate to that kind of thing. I realised that.
Do you think it would have been good to reference that audience's? So
yeah, definitely.
what kind of magazines?
Like the ones kind of beauty magazines and things like that. Maybe like quotes of like the titles, but play around with it, make them sound kind of similar, but to do with my project as well. Like make them maybe like puns and stuff like that, just play on words. Could have worked quite well.
Okay. Sometimes it's nice to do something completely different.
Yeah.
That's only one kind of graphic way of working. Another alternative is to capitalize on some of the conventions that they might be aware of, but you're not trying to subvert them in any way.
Yeah.
I mean, can you think of products like that that you've looked at
Not off the top.
that
of my
kind of
head.
connect to this?
Not off the top of my head. No.
So that target market, would they be expecting, you know, typography different on every page or not?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Does that connect to other kind of magazine products that you might have seen, where you have seen you have seen a graphic magazine, not a graphic magazine, any kind of magazine out there that has different graphics on every page? Can you think of anything along those lines?
They kind of do have a house style, like some things are similar, but mostly the same kind of typography throughout.
The kind of magazines I'm thinking of are music, like Kerrang and that kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
thing. Where, I mean, sometimes you can't even tell what magazine you're looking at from one page to the next.
Yeah.
So that's kind of got that feel
Okay.
in it, which is a very different audience.
Yeah.
Okay. Typographically and editorial in terms of design, anything else you would change now to meet, thinking about that audience, that you would change to meet them?
I'll definitely make more of a consistent font all the way through. Maybe do kind of spin-offs of like how the fonts that magazines use, but in my puns that I would have to think of.
In terms of the front, if you were 40 years old, you know, reasonably middle class, you were wealthy and you were going to spend some money on a good cause, what would attract them to that?
The house. Everyone likes to feel like home, and the fact that it's like kind of gritty and there's bits worn off of it will make you think. Look at it, and then you can read the title, which is like home ... less, which kind of makes you
Okay.
kind of wonder a bit more and want to maybe look inside.
Okay. Any other questions, Andy? I didn't really get to see the product, but Will?
I like the duality of the flip side. you can start. It's almost like your starting point is wherever you want it to be. Is that's intentional, or is
Yeah,
it by
it's
chance?
like you can read from, because the images are kind of flipped, so one side it's one way round.
You create. It's like the audience creates its own meaning for
Yeah.
the piece itself, which I think is a really good thing. Really good.
Thank you ever so much. Yeah. So we're going on to Maria.